If you ask yourself what your hope is for your family, we know that it will be something like to have a good life or to thrive. You want to move forward in a way that supports the well-being of you and your children. But when you're in the middle of a separation or a divorce, there are many challenges and questions that are on your mind. Where will we live? Will the children live with me? How often will I see them? How can we afford to create two households? We were just barely making ends meet before. We can't talk about anything, so how are we going to raise our children? I'm angry and hurt and feel as though I can't turn to any of our old friends for support. I think I need court orders to make the separation or divorce legal. How can I navigate the court process? Separating and moving out is bad enough, but now she's taking me to court. These are all questions that you may be struggling to answer and worrying about. Typically, when people are going through separation and divorce, they think they need to turn to legal processes to deal with these questions. While there may be legal aspects that you do need help with, most of what families are dealing with are not actually legal. They're about the social supports that you need, help with the new relationships that you're creating, support to ensure that you and your former spouse can co-parent your children together, and financial advice and assistance. They may also be legal in nature, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go to court. I'm Diana Lowe, Executive Counsel to the Chief Justice of the Court of Queen's Bench of Alberta and co-lead of the RFJS initiative, or RFJS. This is an important initiative that's underway in Alberta to refocus the family justice system so that families dealing with separation and divorce get the supports they need and can focus on their family well-being. The people involved in the RFJS include judges, lawyers, court administrators, social workers, educators, healthcare providers, faith-based groups, and others who are interested in family wellness. Those who work in the family justice system observe getting to a hearing takes forever. The children will be grown up before the courts finally make a decision about them. What do judges know about the children for whom these judges are making decisions? Practically nothing, and the judge has to decide the best interests of these children. Court burns families out. Court processes cost way too much, and families are left with big debt. The legal jargon, the legal processes, ordinary people do not understand. Courts disempower parents. Every judge decides things differently. Court processes permit mums and dads to beat up on each other, and court becomes a battlefield. These are just some of the responses that people who work in the family justice system have when asked about the problems that they identify with the existing legal adversarial processes in family matters. Judges describe their experiences of sitting in family court over the years, watching the battles being enacted and reenacted in their courtrooms, and becoming very concerned about the children. They find themselves wondering about what must be happening for these children if there is this much stress between these parents. What we've learned is that the impact on their children of these unresolved disputes and toxic relationships is serious indeed. And we believe it's important to share this with parents and with all professionals and supports who are in place in our society to help change the way that families approach separation and divorce. What we've come to understand is that our family justice system is not well suited to the close, ongoing relationships that occur in families. In fact, our legal processes are doing more harm than good. It's not unusual for the courts to have family cases that go on for years. Parents come before judges over and over to deal with issues such as custody, access, maintenance, and property. We see families back multiple times, usually before different judges. Always, the parents are adversarial, often vitriolic, and even aggressive. The adversarial processes in family matters can be described as a toxic brew. The problems that judges are asked to sort out are sometimes for serious matters, such as deciding where the children will live, assessing income for the purpose of child support, and dividing matrimonial property. But the issues often devolve to asking the judge to make decisions about non-legal things, such as what time they'll pick up their children, 3 o'clock or 3:15, whether they can take them on vacations, whether they can register them in soccer or music, and numerous other issues that are properly decisions that parents should be making. These things are about parenting and the relationship between parents and their children. They are particular and unique children. These issues are not legal. They're issues about loving their children, knowing the skills and abilities of their children, and nurturing those skills and abilities. How can a judge possibly know these things about your children? And yet, sometimes, even after a full trial has been heard, the parties are back before the courts because they can't work out the details in their ongoing parenting. They don't have the parenting and relationship skills they need in order to parent their children. Further, they're often more focused on and concerned about the breakdown in their relationship than they are about the well-being of their children. At least that's the way it looks to those of us in the family justice system, including judges who are asked to make decisions about children. So as you've heard, a courtroom is not a great place to work out the details of family relationships. However, there is a necessity for courts. There are some issues that do not lend themselves to a collaborative agreement between the parents, and there are some people who simply cannot agree. This is where the courts fit in. For example, if there are legal issues such as domestic violence, it is very important that the parties can turn to the courts quickly to get orders that are designed to keep families safe. Courts will always be a place that families can turn to for protection and to help resolve issues that they can't work out themselves. While courts will always be available to assist you if you need protection or help resolving issues that you can't work out for yourselves, there are other kinds of supports that may help you to resolve questions in a way that is much better for you and your children. In Alberta, we have the benefit of a private foundation that has been working for the past 10 years to understand and share knowledge about the impacts on children of toxic stress or conflict between parents. It's a gift to families in Alberta and Canada, and in fact to many other countries in the world. The Alberta Family Wellness Initiative has helped us to understand that toxic stress, the kind that can occur when families have unresolved disputes and children are exposed to tensions between fighting parents, is harmful to children's brains. I want to share a video with you that helps to explain the impact of stress on brain development and to encourage you to watch this, as well as many other resources on their website. Indeed, they have an online course that is free, which you can take to learn all about brain science. They call it the Brain Science Certification Course, and we think that all families would benefit from the knowledge in this course. What the brain science tells us is that separation and divorce can be an adverse childhood experience. What this means is that fighting between parents actually harms the development of children's brains. It harms the endocrine system of the child, the immune system, and even affects their DNA. Toxic parental relationships harm children throughout their development, into puberty and adulthood. The effects of toxic stress impacts on the health of the child and creates risks that continue throughout the child's life. The kind of conflict between parents that creates this lifelong harm does not require physical abuse. Indeed, it only requires contempt by one parent for another, belittling, control, conflict that children hear and feel and which impacts them today and potentially for the rest of their lives. In our courtrooms, we see all of this, and we see that parents often lack any understanding of what this behavior is doing to their children. They stand in front of the judge and say, "This is in the best interest of my child," and then they proceed to belittle the other parent. What those parents and all of us need to understand is that what we need to change our thinking to truly focus on what is best for the kids. The reality is that parenting is a lifelong commitment, whether the parents are together or apart. The relationship between parents changes when they go through separation and divorce, but it is still a relationship that they have with each other, and most importantly, with their children. And that relationship is really key to the well-being of their children. If families and their supporters understood that concept, we would have so much less stress and definitely less toxicity. It's also really important to tell you that brain science is not only about negative consequences. In fact, it provides us with real hope that we can do things differently, both as a system, but also in our individual families. One of the things that brain science does is to let us understand about the kinds of experiences that can cause harm so that we can prevent these things from happening. As a system, we are working on different approaches to family issues so that families do not go down the path of adversarial processes that could cause harm. We encourage you, as parents, to avoid these kinds of adversarial approaches for the sake of yourself and the well-being of your children. And in circumstances where some of these adverse experiences have occurred, there may have been stresses in your family which you're worried will have impacted your children. The brain science knowledge tells us that it is possible to build resilience. This is the concept of neuroplasticity, which is about healing that can occur when supports are put in place that help you to build resilience and reduce the risks of lifelong harm. This is really important for our policies, programs, and for helping individual families to achieve healthy outcomes in spite of adverse experiences. Your role as a parent continues after the relationship between you and your spouse comes to an end. You are transitioning from a couple, an intimate relationship between the two of you, to a relationship of co-parenting your children. We like to change the words we use from thinking of separation and divorce as a family breakdown to family restructuring. We think this is a better reflection of the continuing relationship and a reminder that you are still a family. We know that your relationship as a couple may be painful. You may be experiencing shame, blame, anger, fear, and guilt. You may be grieving the loss of your relationship. You may be experiencing stress as it relates to your financial situation and your feelings of wholeness as a person. However, you are still parents and must continue to parent together in a way that is healthy for your children. That's not easy to do, given how torn up you may feel. Nevertheless, your children understand that they are made up of parts of both of you, both father and mother. The reality is that your children still see each of you as their parent, whom they want to love and to be loved by. I want to tell you a tragic illustration of this that Dr. Stephen Carter described in his book, Family Restructuring Therapy. At page 51, he describes, "The example I often use is of a preteen girl who academically stated, 'Genetically, I'm 50% my mother. Since my father hates my mother, that part of me must be bad. I'm also 50% genetically my father. Since my mother hates my father, there goes the other half. I must be all bad, so what does it matter if I cut myself?'" The reality is that your children also want to see their grandparents, aunts, and uncles, and cousins as part of them. How cruel is it to your children to forbid them to care about the other parent, about the other members of their family? And remember, forbidding is communicated to children in many ways that may not necessarily be explicit. When I learned about the impact of high conflict on the development of children's brains, it underlined for me that we, all of us, need to find ways to support families going through restructuring so that the challenges that families are dealing with can be worked out in a healthy way rather than made worse. One of our judges has begun to direct parents who appear before him to watch the brain science video and the resilience video, and also that they must say only positive things to their children about the other parent. In cases where he can see that the parents have been talking to their children in negative ways about each other, he directs them to have no communication with their children about the matters in dispute, and that the only way they may talk to their children about the other parent is this: it is important that you have a good relationship with your other parent. This is just a small but important message to help parents move away from adversarial and angry communications that affect their children. Our hope is that it will be the beginning of a more healthy approach for their family. Most of the people who work in the family justice system and are involved in supporting families are concerned about the family justice system and trying very hard to make their part of the system work better. These efforts are often described as improving access to justice. Until recently, these efforts have tended to focus on getting more access to lawyers, improving the court processes, and trying to make the system work better. In spite of tremendous effort and energy to improve access to justice, though, we've found that the outcomes for families have really not improved. Families come to the justice system looking for ways to resolve their disputes, but often find that they get entrenched in adversarial processes that go round and round, that they spend more money than they can afford, and their relationships become so toxic that they can't deal with each other. They end up coming back to the court again and again to deal with every issue that arises, and the problems just seem to get worse. Families want justice. Parents, grandparents, relatives, and friends want justice. But we hear over and over that they don't find it in the courts. Why? We've come to realize that the meaning of justice is not commonly held. What someone in the courts has meant by that word and what the public means are two very different things. Judges and lawyers have tended to understand justice as meaning that there is a clearly defined process governed by the rule of law and the rules of natural justice. By contrast, what the public tells us is that they understand justice as the right to a good life for their families. Brain science helps us to understand that our system has actually been contributing to the harm, and that what we need to do is to help families get the kinds of supports they need to deal with the broader issues they're facing and not focus only on legal issues. In Alberta, we're now working together to achieve the kind of outcome that the public wants to help families thrive. I'm very pleased to tell you about the Reforming the Family Justice System initiative that is underway in Alberta to reform, or really to reimagine, the family justice system. The Reforming the Family Justice System initiative recognizes that family justice is actually about the social, relationship, parenting, and financial needs of families. There may be a legal element, but the priority for families really must be to get the supports they need to move forward in a way that will help them to have a good life. Justice Jerky of the Court of Queen's Bench is co-convening this initiative, along with the Assistant Deputy Minister of Resolution and Court Administration Services in the Ministry of Justice and the immediate past president of the Law Society. We are working with more than 400 individuals and organizations throughout Alberta to reimagine the family justice system based on brain science and with the goal of helping families thrive. I'm very optimistic that we have the right people collaborating with us to bring about the kind of change that will help families thrive even when they're going through changes in their family structure. We want to take a moment to reflect on the role of lawyers in the family justice system. The role they play of least importance, in our view, is the role of gladiator in court. They are essential in their role as educator and consultant and helping parents to reach a healthy agreement for moving forward in their newly restructured relationship. For parents to settle property issues, they need to know what the law is. That's an information role. The lawyer can also help to provide paths to resolution using appropriate resources such as financial experts, parenting advice, and counselors. If the parents are incapable of resolving their issues, then lawyers can advise about the dispute resolution processes such as mediation, and if necessary, can help their client ready themselves for an appearance in court. So what does this mean for you and your family? If you and your former spouse are at a point where you know that you're moving on from your personal relationship and you're able to agree that you want to do so in a way that's healthy for you and your children, you are choosing a path that is positive for both you and your family. You may need some help working out the parenting arrangements, and you will find that there are social workers, counselors, and other service providers who can support you to create parenting relationships that will help you to make good choices for your children. There are financial advisors who can assist you with the arrangements that you need to create two households and deal with some of the financial questions that can arise. And of course, there are lawyers to help you with the legal issues that need to be worked out and coming to an agreement that sets out how you're going to move forward in your newly structured family. The more that you can do to resolve the questions you have together with the assistance of experts, the more you will stay in control of your own healthy future. Please do not default to lawyers and courts to assist you to restructure. There are many supports available to assist you and your family. We've written about some of these in our article in the Divorce magazine, such as the services available in most communities across the province in Family and Community Support Services, or FCSS offices, and in Parent Link centres. There are also online tools that have been developed to assist families with communications as they co-parent their children together. And there are financial tools to assist families to work out their financial responsibilities. The kinds of supports that you need are also well represented by the services set out in the Divorce magazine. This is a great way for you to move forward with the kind of change that will allow you and your children to have a healthy future. We wish you all the very best.